Events leading up to the Civil War by Daniel Moran. The Civil War, also known as the War Between States, was fought between the United States of America and the Confederate States of America, a collection of 11 southern states that left the Union in 1860 and 1861 and formed their own country in order to protect the institution of slavery. The war went on for 4 years, ending in the United States defeating the Confederate States and abolishing slavery nationwide. As you can see in the timeline coming up, Abraham Lincoln being appointed president was the first stage in the Civil War beginning, as he wanted to abolish slavery. 7 states then seceded and began war, fighting for the right to have slaves. The transatlantic slave trade was the beginning of slavery in America. It started by the Portuguese by bringing slaves from Africa to South America and Europe. American slavers soon got in on this, as described by Liz Clark in Inhuman Traffic, a graphic history novel. America would send slavers over to Africa, bring slaves back over to America, and sell them to farmers, agriculture. The Middle Passage was a track between Africa and America, where slaves were captured in their home villages of Africa and forced to make this trek on overpopulated, disease-ridden ships that were also forced into starvation, rape, and sometimes death. Cujo Lewis does a great job of describing this as a first-hand experience in the book Barracoon. Another key moment that led to the Civil War was in 1859 when John Brown led a group of 21 men to Virginia to capture weapons stored at the U.S. Arsenal at Harper's Ferry. His goal was to destroy the slave system in the South, and this would help do so. The most important part that led to the Civil War was Abraham Lincoln being elected in 1860. He was elected by considerable margins, despite not being included on many Southerners' ballots. As a Republican, his anti-slavery outlook struck fear into many Southerners. On December 20th, 1860, a little over a month after the polls closed, South Carolina seceded from the Union. 6 more states followed by the spring of 1861. To give you an idea of how Abraham Lincoln viewed slavery, he had a quote from his October 16, 1854 speech at Peoria, where he said, "Slavery is founded in the selfishness of man's nature." Another issue that led to the Civil War was in 1857 with the Dred Scott versus Sanford case. Dred Scott was a Virginia slave who tried to sue for his freedom in court. The case eventually rose to the level of the Supreme Court, where the justices found that as a slave, Dred Scott was a piece of property that had none of the legal rights or recognitions afforded to human beings. In conclusion, all of these events led up to the Civil War. The Civil War had a greater impact on American society than any other event in the country's history. It was also the most traumatic experience endured by any generation of Americans. Nearly 620,000 soldiers lost their lives in this war. That's 2% of the American population in 1861. Thank you for stopping by. Daniel Moran. I will also submit my sources and annotated bibliography through the Blackboard, and thank you so much for teaching such an amazing class.